So let's get into it. Ape Made.
What in the world?
Let's talk about. I just want to say, like, I've been knowing you for a while, and I've seen like your work ethic is just like amazing. Like I wanted to say that's all you do, but I know that you.
Uh, Sometimes it is. I try. I have planners here, which you can see, to try to like not work all the time.
Yeah, I know you're a proud
Yeah,
homeowner, and I seen you do a transition on, buying your first house, going from the studio, doing that. I see you do a lot of
yeah.
work in the community. I see you do a lot of work at schools, residents, working at home, fashion. I mean, not a fashion line, but a clothing brand that you've been doing that since 2011, being an entrepreneur and all that.
2009 actually, but
Oh, okay.
it was official in like with the state. It was official in 2011. But I had been doing it probably since like 2009, so that it feels actually kind of similar to now, like because I graduated at the height of the recession in 2008 from Kent
Oh,
State, which is actually like why I started doing my own thing, because the economy was just such crap. I think the 2020 grads probably have it a lot worse than the
right,
2008
right.
grads. Um, but yeah, I guess I see parallels there.
How did you get into, can you talk a little bit about how you got into, expressing yourself using screen printing and things like that, and how it evolved into teaching and
Yeah.
how it evolved to where it got to now?
Um, so I actually was a drawing major at Kent before I switched to printmaking. And I wanted to be a photo major actually, but
Mm,
they didn't have fine art photo at Kent
mm,
at that time. They only had like journalism photography. So I knew I wanted to do something with art, but so I picked drawing because I actually started college when I was still in high school. So I was like barely 17 when I started at Kent.
oh, okay.
Um, I just wanted to get out of high school.
Right.
And I was poor, so you get like a year paid basically if you can do that. So I always try to promote young people to do post-secondary if they can. They even pay for your books, which is
Mm,
amazing. Yeah, so I was drawing, and then even in my drawing, I think I was really like a very graphic person. And like I said, I love photography too. So photography kind of fits in with printmaking a little bit better. And so I had some printmaking instructors that were like recruiting me into the
mm,
printmaking
mm.
program. And then once I was in printmaking, screen printing again, I think speaks to me in like the immediacy of it and the mass producibility of it. I don't think that's a word, but again, maybe that's like a poverty mentality or something. Like I felt like I got more bang for my buck with screen printing.
Mm.
And it was like more efficient use of my time than like slaving away over a painting or, like carving or doing intaglio or things that are more time consuming. So I liked, I guess, the accessibility of screen printing.
Was it more on print or was it more on clothing at the time?
At the time, I didn't start doing any clothing until I would say after I graduated, or right about at the end of my college career, I would say. I think the first shirts I did were like for a friend for
Mm.
some Cabrew thing. And I think I was still in college at the time, but that was the first clothing I had done. Um,
Was you always Ape Made at the time? Or was you
no, I
talking
mean,
about,
so the
I love
name
the
was
name. I
like,
love the name. It's so catchy. It's like I love it. So
oh, really?
yeah, I
So
do.
it kind of felt like, so I didn't pick that name until I was registering my business, which would have been, I guess, 2011. And it was like, I'm just like me. So what do I make this thing be called? Like the
Hmm.
LLC or whatever. Um, and so it's also nice because it's anything I make is Ape Made because I made it.
Right.
So like, So it's it leaves me free to like do whatever I want, which I like to. Yeah, and I also studied history at Kent, just because I felt like art programs, or maybe art in general, can start to be really like a bubble, and like kind of like self-serving too, of like, oh, I just have to build my body of work. And not that that's not important, but I guess for me it like wasn't enough. So yeah, so I actually have 2 degrees from Kent, one
Awesome.
history and one art.
I'm kind of glad you said that. I think it's like more of a responsible role to have a voice, like more than everybody. It's our obligation to really express ourselves on the times and what's going on. So, I mean, I guess I could use that as a segue into getting into some stuff that I saw you was doing was like kind of jump really head first into the COVID movement, and now into Black Lives Matter and what's going on with the civil unrest and all of that stuff. What's going on? I seen you doing some donations, doing some stuff with the first responders. Can you get into a little bit about COVID and how that kind of changed the landscape for you at all?
Yeah, so like on a personal or like day-to-day work reality level, it didn't change initially that much because I always work by myself and I always work at home. So like in that respect, it was kind of like I was in training for this for the last 10 years or something. But yeah, so I regularly do donations, like maybe once a month or like every other month through my business. And I think it's kind of because I do feel a little bit isolated working by myself all the time. It's a way that I can like support things that I want to support. And so I try to keep it local. And so I've done that for years now with the cash donations. So they're kind of like sales based. So it's a certain percentage of profit basically from sales. So I don't have a lot of money, but it's like I have a lot of shirts and stuff laying around. So it's just like a way that I can utilize what I already have. And it's really customer driven of like how many orders I get. And so when COVID hit, I kind of felt like, yeah, and I can't leave my house either. So it felt like, okay, this is something I can do from my home. So I've been doing them continuously since that happened. I try to keep it local, like with local organizations, and I try to reach out to people I know of like where the impact would be the best, because sometimes with big organizations you don't really know where your money is actually being utilized. So yeah, I think right now I'm at like 1,300. And we got like another 140 for Black Lives Matter that hasn't been donated yet, because that's ongoing right now. And I hope like it also helps spread the word. Like using my little presence, I guess, is like promoting things that I care about.
Can you talk about a little bit more about can you elaborate some more on like the history and studying the history, because a lot of what's going on is like a lack of knowledge of with the history of.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So a lot of my pieces, honestly, for a long time, I was just kind of consumed with like the t-shirt end of it. And that kind of became its own like monster. I'm super grateful for it, but it just grew and grew and grew. And then so I kind of stopped making personal work for a long time, honestly. And then I think a few years ago, I just made like that conscious intention of like, hey, I'm gonna like give my energy to working on different things and get back into that personal work. So I read a lot, and so I think that impacts a lot of what I'm thinking about. And a lot of what I read is like history and politics and social things. So, and then in this time, it's just, it's just a barrage. I mean, it's
Right.
like almost like, what do you even talk about? Because there's so many things to talk about, which can be like paralyzing in its own way,
Right.
because like, how do you pick a thing? There's so many things. So yeah, some of my work is like directly influenced by books, and I will cite them. A lot of it is just like current events.
Let's
And
talk about just the clothing in itself and picking a subject. It seems like you have your own Ohio pride, which is cool. I love it. Um, I, uh, I talked to somebody else who was into retail and stuff, and they was talking about copycats and stuff like that, and being
yeah.
copied. It seems like that's kind of a trend. And how did you kind of get your own type of style and not be waved about what was going on, or get your own type of you know
Yeah.
how did you get into just doing Ohio brand stuff? Seems
So
like
that, yeah, so that's, has become a big thing, and there's all kinds of that stuff in the world now. I think the
and
first shirt
I'm
I
sorry to
made,
cut you off. I'm sorry to cut you off, but not just t-shirts too. You got coasters, you got aprons, you got kids
yeah,
clothes. Let's get into um oh, I'm sorry to cut you off. I do that a lot.
that's
So
okay.
you went from the studio, you made a transition from the studio to being a homeowner and kind of running stuff out of your house. Can you talk about the difference in the two and the transitions and why you like the space better?
So, honestly, so I started in my basement in Kent. I was still in Kent when I started. I'm gonna try to hit both those topics
Okay.
because they kind of interrelate. And so I love to travel, and everywhere I would travel, people were from Ohio, or like they knew someone in Ohio, or there was like this weird Ohio connection. And so I made the big, huge, like bold, like, yeah, I'm from Ohio shirt. And
Mm.
so that was kind of just in response. So again, like all my stuff is, I think, really organic. Like I never sat down and was like, I'm gonna like start a clothing company, or I'm gonna have this brand. So it kind of, like I said, when I called it a monster, it kind of like just grew into this thing. Um, and so that was the first shirt. And then people just wanted it. Like I made it for myself, and
Mm.
then like people wanted them, and then I'm selling them out my trunk of my car. And then Salty Not Sweet, which was my first store, they used to be over in Collinwood. They're in Ohio City now. They were like, "Can we sell these?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like I was like shocked that they wanted to. So this was like 2009, I would say. Um, and again, recession. I had no money. I was printing on like Gabriel Brothers shirts, so it was like pretty janky. Like but people were buying them, and so I think at that time, like there wasn't the proliferation of that stuff that we have now. Like Cleveland Clothing was also starting around that time,
Mm.
and maybe one or two others. And so I was like, oh, people are buying this stuff. Oh, I'm making money, and like I need to make money. So I expanded it out. I did like Akron and Cleveland and Midwest, so like more regional stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and then so it kind of became its thing, like, and that's what you're known for.
Mm.
Um, and not to like denigrate it, because I'm super grateful, but like personally, it's like I'm kind of over that and ready for new stuff. And so, like I said, in the past few years, I've been shifting my energies and making different kinds of things.
Can you talk about that? That's awesome.
Shifting energies.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do a lot of just recently, this is kind of a new thing for me, of like I'm a big list person, and I became like a lot more intentional about my habits a few
Mm.
years ago. And I use this habit tracker by Free Period Press, their local company, which I love. And so that was kind of game changing for me, of like, where am I actually putting my time, and like, what do I want to put my time into?
Love it.
And so, yeah, I like put it out there for the universe, and I hope for the
Mhm.
best. And also I work really hard. So
You do. You
I
do.
think this is
I don't
combined
want to.
with
I don't want
me.
to. I seen you. I seen
Yeah.
you put in the work. Where do you get that? Where do you get that from? Is that your upbringing, like I seen you work relentlessly, like pop up shops. Like I know.
Oh God, I used to be like every week popping up, and that's really exhausting.
So is that
And
kind of why you try to track yourself, because you can be kind of all over the place?
yeah, so I actually also I started using a time tracker on my phone, and you can have different categories, so like for different projects or whatever. And that was really helpful in like turning it off because
Mm.
I'd be like, oh, it's Wednesday and I've already worked 42 hours. Okay, I can take a day off and like go do something I want to do. But I don't know. My mom works really hard. She raised me as a single mom. I think it's also just necessity. Like I'm every dollar, I gotta figure it out. So, you know, like, yeah.
I kind of asked that because I mean, I want to say a lot of these videos is for like the youth. Like I'm all about the youth, you know that. So I just wanted to give them some perspective on the inside of, creative and how we think and the things we do. To me, when I look at you, I kind of see like you're analog because you got the VHS collection up to the ceiling.
Right.
So I'm thinking you're not too digital. So your books and stuff, are
No.
those all paper? You reading your paper books too, or?
Yes, I really hate ebooks. I read them once in a while, like just cause to save
Hey,
money.
what? I ain't hear you.
Like I do read ebooks once in a while, just if I can get them for free through the library and I don't want to spend money to buy the
Right.
book. But I kind of hate ebooks. I have a big vinyl collection too. So yeah, there probably is something to that. I think, having, like you asked earlier about like what made my style different or something
Mm,
about the shirts. And I think having that arts background, a lot of my stuff is either hand drawn or like a manipulated photograph. So to manipulate a photograph for screen, it often ends up looking kind of gritty or like DIY.
mm,
So like I'm not like a vectorized, clean
mm.
illustrator
I like that.
person.
Yeah,
And it's kind of like I'm just working with the skills I have,
yeah.
like, and I don't really like want to be that type of a graphic designer, or
You
that's
know,
not my background. You know what
yeah,
I'm
you know
saying?
what? You know what's funny about that is that I'm all digital. So my books, like I got stacks of them, but they're all on my iPad. And I think like for me, working like that, I kind of do miss the analytical side of me. Like, cause when I started out, I was in the 90s. So, a
It was
lot
all
of,
analog.
yeah, so I don't draw no
Yeah,
more. It's like I was kind of talking to Jay who worked for the Cavs, and he was like, he didn't have his iPad and he didn't know what to draw on. So he was like, damn, like I got
yeah,
notebooks. What, you know what I'm saying? So it's like we kind of
yeah. I just got Procreate like last year because I was like, a lot of times I just need to make like a quick like hand drawn edit, and it's annoying, to do it with a mouse in Photoshop. For like, get my layers right or whatever. And I was like, oh, this will be great. It'll like be life changing. And it's kind of great in a way, like, but I still draw like a screen printer. Like I just draw these really basic, like I don't feel like I'm utilizing Procreate in the ways I could because I'm still in my like super graphic and easily layerable, screen printable ways of creating. So I do that a little bit, but up until that point, all my stuff, I would just draw it on paper with like pen and scan it, which is not ideal. Like you lose some detail usually. But then I feel like with Procreate, it's just not the same. Like it just
right.
isn't, drawing on that screen just like doesn't feel the same. I don't know. So
Yeah.
I would say do both if you're a student. Like, yeah, just like, or mix and match or like see what works for you.
Right. Can you talk about like your student involvement? Are you in contact with students now? I know you had some residents or something recently.
Yeah, so I was actually teaching at CIA when COVID hit and we had to cancel our class. Right when it was getting good, it was like
No.
um
What are you teaching?
screen printing usually. So I did a class there last summer. So these are continuing education. I'm not like a professor at CIA or anything. And it was pretty cool because they were open to me combining the history and the screen printing. So it was kind of like printmaking as a tool for social change. So we got to talk about, which is a huge, broad thing you could talk forever about.
Right.
But it was cool to integrate that into the screen printing class.
So was it project based?
I guess it was an adult class, so they were open to whatever projects they wanted to do.
Was they picking a history? Can you elaborate a little bit on what history they was?
So I just developed it myself. So I covered certain artists specifically. Like I love Karita Kent, the screen printing nun. She's like, do you know her?
Tell me about it.
She's like a social justice screen printing nun. If you Google her, it's so cool. There's like, she's got like all these nuns screen printing, you know, and they got the habits on and everything. Maybe I did have a few years of Catholic school, so maybe that's why I like her. But she was like very anti-war, anti-racist, like very cool lady. And she actually ended up leaving the church, and I'm not sure if it's because she was like too radical or what, but she's now being considered like a quintessential pop artist, which she never really was. So she also will use like similar to Warhol, like commercial stuff, like Wonder Bread, but she's talking about Christ, you know, the bread of the sacrament and things like that. So she was a big one I focused on. And then, of course, you know, you got to do Warhol and whoever else. But they're not really so much in the social justice end of it. So we talk about Keith Haring, who, you know, is a painter more / muralist, but he did do screen printing also. And then I talked about, oh gosh, we went all the way back. So like one example that I thought was really historically important was the abolitionists who wanted to end slavery. They actually printed, you've probably seen it, like the schematics for the slave ships with all the bodies.
Yeah.
And so they actually printed those and like mass distributed them to turn public opinion against slavery. Nice. So that's like a really old example of a tactic that has been used throughout history. But then, you know, pretty much everyone, we talk about the Black Panthers who had all kinds of different printing operations and how people would break in and destroy their printing stuff, which this happened all throughout history too, because, you know, it's a tool, right? And it's a way of furthering your cause. And they were interesting too, because they not only printed, like everyone prints flyers and posters and stuff, like political or for social causes, but I had found some images, you know, they did the lunch programs and like breakfast programs and whatnot, and where they printed like on the bags where they would give food out. So like, you know, kind of expanding it beyond the poster, which I thought was interesting. And then, yeah, of course, all kinds of like freedom movements, anti-colonial movements. It's like the deeper you go, it's you can find examples everywhere. And then, of course, you have all these kind of more revolutionary uses or counterculture uses. But then you have state-sponsored propaganda posters as well. So we talked about that too. So, awesome. And I mean, you could argue it's all propaganda, right? Depending on your viewpoint. But yeah, I went down the rabbit hole and I had like all the examples.
I love it. Where was you getting your references from? Was it a lot of internet or was it a lot of, you got books too?
It's a lot of internet. For instance, like the WPA posters, I think there's like one book maybe of a compilation of those, which those are, you know, were government sponsored, but a lot of them are made in Cleveland, which is cool. Chicago and other cities, there were big collectives of artists that were employed to create these posters. So there's a book called, I think it's called Posters for the People, and it's about the WPA posters, which is pretty cool. But yeah, most of the images I was finding on different online resources.
Are you in contact with like some students now? Like,
Right now, no, because is anyone in contact? I
right.
don't know. Yeah, my CIA class just got canceled indefinitely. And that was a youth class. That was like a teen, young adult class. So we were not including that history component, but just kind of a generalized screen printing program. Yeah, right as it was getting good, we got
I
shut down.
know. I
So.
know.
Yeah, I do. I'm not at the current moment connected, but
Are you mentoring anybody or anything like that? Or how do you, can you talk about, let me ask you, I asked a question, then I asked another question. Are you mentoring anybody at this point?
not in any formal way, no.
No, I got you. I got you.
No.
So it seems like you was doing a lot of pop-up shops, but has it mostly moved online? And how do you see that? Do you use Etsy
Yeah,
too? You use Etsy too, right?
I do. I was just talking about this last night, actually. You know, I got on Etsy in 2011. It
Hmm.
was a very different landscape, and they've changed a lot in ways I don't really love. But I kind of feel like I'm stuck because I have all my reviews and
Hmm.
I have so much inventory and it's already up. You know,
Hmm.
I've just been too demotivated to make a switch. It's a lot of fees. It's a lot of algorithm issues that have changed, and it's not really all handmade anymore, which it was when I started.
It's
So just
oversaturated. Are you selling
yeah.
stuff elsewhere outside of Etsy, like straight on the website? Can you talk
So
about
all my sales online just are on Etsy, just because it keeps it simpler for me to have it all in one place.
that?
Again, if I was starting now, I probably wouldn't go that route, but
Which route?
I'm kind of grandfathered in, I think, at
Right.
this.
What route would you go? Let's just say I was a young artist and wanted to get into silk screening and stuff, just on the sales part. And we could talk about, maybe the equipment part and stuff like that. But let me ask you this. Also, I'll jump to the next question. So what route would you go?
There's a lot of more integrated e-commerce that you could do through your website.
Like
So,
Shopify?
like, I think most people recommend Shopify, but there are other options too. I know there's a lot of stuff online of like comparative pros and cons of each, but most people that I personally know seem to like Shopify and would recommend that. But yeah, I run all my inventory through Square, which is how I would take payments at shows and stuff. So I have all my inventory through Square, and then after that, Etsy added an inventory option. So I
Right.
don't know. I feel like I've been in it too long, and everything evolved like around me. So
Can you talk about the inventory? The inventory seemed like it could just be a monster by itself because it's like, do I need extra smalls? Do I need 3X's? How many do I
oh
need?
God,
Do I print
it's
on
a
demand? Because if it seems like it'd be easier, like I print per order, but then it's like the hecticness. And can you talk about that at all, please? What's the secret?
yeah. Actually, I get a lot of questions about that from people. So generally, I would say a pyramid of sizes is like how it goes. So your extra smalls are the least, and your 2X or 3X are the least, and then your like middle, like medium or large is probably going to be your most. Then I say that, and I make all those sizes, and then I sell out of other sizes, So
Right.
like it's always a crapshoot, I think. Um, Printing to order for me is like not awesome because then you still have to have all this blank inventory laying around.
Mhm.
Um, and so my new studio, like you mentioned my studio. So yeah, I was in this big giant loft, well, two lofts. And so I bought a house with, this is my studio, it's kind of a mess, with 3 units. So one of the units is my studio, which is nice because while it's smaller, it's like 600 square feet, it's separate. And I always had the live work thing going, which I think speaks to like why you can't stop working, because you're always looking at it and
Right.
sitting there watching you like while you're in the living room. So for one person, it's like, okay, I can make this work. I have a room in the back that has my light table and my spray out booth and all my screens and my inks and my inventory. So that's like kind of tucked in the back. And then this is my big printing room where I have t-shirt press and my printing table. And then this was an apartment, like a little tiny apartment. This was the kitchen, which is now my office.
Oh, awesome.
So I have like, can you see it?
Yeah.
Like a little kitchen there. And there's a bathroom and all that good stuff. But so it just works for one person. But to have a bunch of blank shirts laying around, it's like, so I don't personally do that. And then given, I know you know a little bit about screen printing, like the setup, it's all the time, a lot of the time is in the setup. So to set up and clean up and all that for one shirt, it's not really like time efficient.
Right. Can you talk about like, let's just say I was starting off on the basic level of getting started. Do I need the conveyor belt? Like, you got the drying conveyor belt? I mean,
I
it
have a
seems
flash
like I need.
dryer.
Say it again.
So I wish I could show you some pictures. So I actually have done a little history involvement of Ape Made presentation for students, but yeah, I started in my basement and I was using hand stretch screens that we made in college. So like I didn't buy a bunch of stuff, but I had those left over from college. I would use Zygote press, which I know you know, for exposing my screens initially because I didn't have a way to expose or reclaim screens. I did not have a dryer, so I would print in my basement and air dry them from hangers on the pipes in the basement. I only use water-based inks, so they dry pretty fast, actually. If you wanted to, you could like iron them to heat set them, or you could throw them in your dryer, like your clothes dryer, or maybe even a hair dryer too. You could do.
You can get the little stand that comes up and put the heater on. That's okay.
So that's what I use now. I just have a little flash dryer. But like I said, I had no money. Like I started my business with nothing. Like, and I actually ended up using 0 interest credit cards, like to start my business, because I would use, I mean, they were low limit, but it was like a couple $1,000s, and that's how I would buy my inventory. And then I would just pay it back before the interest would start. So that's really how it started. So not having that money, it was like, okay, I'm just gonna air dry them and make it work.
Do you do a lot of 4-color processing, or do you?
I have a 4-color press, but I mostly do 2 or 1 color things, at least for apparel.
I like that too.
Yeah.
I like that too.
It's also like, it's just about my time. Again, I'm like a time, I think it's all about like making it
right.
easy.
How did you avoid not doing a bunch of family reunion stuff for everybody?
Oh, that's interesting. I did one family reunion shirt, but it's for my family, so it was okay. I think there was like a momentum, I think, when I started behind the DIY stuff that I think has peaked probably, and like you said, got oversaturated. And so I was just so busy doing what I was doing that I didn't really have time to do contract printing. And so I would pass on it usually. When I realized I didn't really want to do the every weekend grind as much anymore at the shows, I started doing a little more contract printing just because it's like easy, quick cash, you know, and then you don't have to like make it and sell it. It's like you just make it for the person and you're done, and you can move on. So I do contract printing, and usually it's usually other like small businesses or local people that come to me. So that's kind of nice too, because I'm not Jack Prince, you know, like I'm not,
Right.
I'm like a small batch, very localized printer, I would say.
Right. How did you might have answered it with the Etsy, like how did you get into a space where you don't do a lot of promoting? It's just like kind of word of mouth, everybody knows. Did you do a lot of promoting at one point? Like you're not buying Facebook ads, you're not saying buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff type of
Um,
stuff.
no, I feel like I need an intern to come and like do all that stuff for me. Um, I think, I don't know. I think it did kind of just develop, like I said, organically. Like, and if you're just doing it and people are seeing you doing it, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
um,
Maybe it was because of the groundwork you was doing, because you was doing a lot of pop-ups, like from Collinwood to downtown to
oh my God, every week, like
yeah.
every week.
So I mean, maybe that was on the ground and building those relationships really made a difference for you. I'm just assuming.
I would agree. Definitely like when starting out, I would agree with that. And then I think also just like being involved with other things outside of trying to sell your stuff. You know, you know what I'm saying? Like, and you know, Cleveland is a small town, really, especially in the creative end of it. Um, Word of mouth is real, and everybody seems to know everybody in a way, or at least in some circles. So yeah, I don't know. I think I just work a lot and things come.
Right.
And if you're I don't know, I think my key is like having different things going on. So I'm not overly reliant on like one thing. You know what I'm
Love.
saying?
Yeah.
So like even when I was not doing as much of like the personal work or the public art or anything like that, it's like, okay, I have events, I have online, I have shops, like consignment shops. So you're getting checks every month, and you know they're selling your stuff at the shop.
Mm.
You also have wholesale. You could do big wholesale orders, contract printing. So you know, so there's like different streams of income. So shit, if Etsy doesn't work out this month, you know, there's other things going on. And so, yeah, I mean, now it's kind of scary because there's no events, there's
Right.
no shops. The shop that sells the most of my stuff was Cleveland Clothing, downtown, and they
Yeah.
had gotten vandalized twice before Saturday's events. So they had already like been vandalized since the pandemic started, just people breaking in and like breaking those huge, you know, glass walls that they have. And then, yeah, Saturday. So like they were just reopening. So
So what are they saying now? Is it I mean, that's a huge hit. I saw all the glass, everything was cleaned out. So what I
I
saw on the
haven't
news, they were saying that they might not recover. So I don't know how true that is. So you
Cleveland
talk,
Clothing specifically or
yeah,
like
Cleveland
esports.
clothing, yeah.
So I haven't heard anything officially from them. I did hear that they removed a lot of the stuff beforehand from the store. I think maybe thinking that could happen. And maybe, you know, because they had already been broken into twice.
Mm.
So I'm not really sure. I would hope that, I don't know, they're the one, right? Like they're like the t-shirt company. And they do support like me and a lot of other independent artists through their different stores. So that would be pretty disappointing if they did not recover.
Oh no. So we don't have unlimited time. I gotta land this plane. Give me some last final words. Let's just say Elon Musk just employed you to go to Mars. And give us some last words and some give me something. What would you say to everybody that's left here and you're going to Mars with Elon Musk?
Ooh, that's like a big. I don't really know anything about Elon Musk.
No, I'm just saying if you
No, I know. I'm gonna speak as if I'm speaking to like an aspiring creative that's maybe has questions. I would say work hard, do what is important to you, because I find a lot of times with the projects I'm doing, I think when I think about how it's going to be received, you know, it kind of affects what I make because you're filtering it through that thought. But when I have something that's like personal to me or meaningful to me, and then I think, is anyone going to care about this? Like, am I the only one? Is it too personal? Am I the only one who this is going to resonate with? Those are the things that people really love. So I would say just like trust yourself.
Awesome. Love it. How can we find you?
Instagram, I'm at Ape MADE. Online, apemadeohio.com, or my more preferred site is my creative site, which is apebleakney.com.
Awesome. Oh, can you talk just a tiny bit about the VHS tapes piled up to the ceiling, please? You got VCRs. How did we get to this point? Like, this should have been my first question.
I blame my grandma. So my grandma had like thousands of VHS tapes, and we would like go movie bumming. So when we were little, she would take us toy bumming, where we would go buy toys, and then movie bumming, we go buy movies. And when I was older, book bumming, and she would buy me books. So she was also a librarian, which is maybe where I get the analog thing from. But whenever, and I think it's funny you mentioned that analog thing, because when DVDs came out, I think I was in high school. Or something, and I just like did not want to part with my VHS tapes. So I think I'm also like really a overly sentimental person. I like to save and hold on to things. And so I bought all these tapes from our video store that was going out of business.
How many do you have?
I have over 2,000. So when my grandma died, I did inherit not a ton, just like a couple boxes.
Right.
Because my mom's one of 7, and they all also have VCRs still, and they all took some too. And so now it's like a thing, and people are like, hey, do you want these 5 boxes of VHS tapes? Nobody else wants them. So I end up inheriting a lot.
That's awesome. I love it.
But I watch them like every night before bed. I put one in.
That's awesome. Did you custom build a case, or I see you doing a lot of DIY stuff too? Did you custom build a case?
Yeah, so all those shelves are custom built.
Oh,
and then,
nice.
I keep adding more. I need to stop. So I'm like cutting myself off on duplicates because people keep giving me duplicates, and I'm like, no, I have 5 Jurassic Parks. I can't have any more. Like, that's fine. But then, I'm weird because I'm like, they get old and they break, or they break down. And so sometimes I want to have a backup.
Is the VCRs new, or is those vintage VCRs you have?
I have a mix. I have backups in case they break.
Got you.
They stopped making them
a
couple of years ago, and the ones they were making were like really not great quality.
They was making the little small ones. I was getting a little small ones.
Do you?
No, I'm all digital. I'm all iPad streaming.
That's the nice thing about being a homeowner. I'm like, I'd never have to move all these books and movies and records ever again.
Right.
Thank God. Because I've been moving them from place to place.
Right. All right, Ape.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Be safe and all that stuff, and keep creating all that stuff. I'll be in touch with you, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. Same.
See you.
Have a good one.
You too. Peace.